What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Could you imagine being sentenced to 35 years and then you win your appeal and you're like, wow, I got a second chance at life? What would you do with that second chance? Today, we got a guy on that was sentenced to 35 years. He wins his appeal. He gets out of prison. But what does he do with his life? Jacob, tell the people who you are, where you're from, and let's get into your story.
My name's Jacob Gentry. I'm from Middle Tennessee, Putnam County. About an hour east of Nashville.
An hour east of Nashville, right? What was your life like growing up, Jacob?
So I come from a good family. My parents, they're still married. You know, been married like 50 years. I've got 4 brothers. My grandmother was a school teacher for like 37 years. Like I come from just a pretty normal American family. I did good in school. Didn't really try. I could have did a lot better if I would apply myself, but it didn't really interest me much. But I was still a pretty good student. But yeah, I had a pretty normal upbringing.
Pretty normal upbringing. Were you ever in jail as a youngster or no?
No, sir. No, sir. I never was. I did. I got a charge once. I got into a fight when I was like 12 years old, and I did get a charge for it, an assault charge, but it ended up getting dropped. So, but that was the only trouble I was ever in.
No drug addiction, none of that stuff, right?
Not as a young person. I mean, I experimented, as a kid, but I come from a real strict home, so. Like I remember, a couple times coming home stoned as hell, and I was just so paranoid that I was going to get in trouble. It wasn't enjoyable for me, so I didn't really get into that stuff until I was like out of my parents' house.
And eventually, we mentioned earlier that you go to prison, you get a 35-year sentence. Tell us how that happens. How you end up with a 35-year sentence.
So I'm a pipeline worker. I'm not currently working on a pipeline, but all my life, my father was a pipeliner. He retired from it. My brothers do it, and I do it too. But I went out to New York State to work on a pipeline out there in 2008, and I had met a girl. She was a dancer, at the Deja Vu. And after about 5 days of me being out there, this girl called, said she wanted to come out there with me, and so I said okay. She came out there, and it caused kind of a uproar, I guess, at my job, because all my it was a big deal. The hotel we lived at was just filled with construction workers, and a lot of people say I'm dumb for letting her come there. Maybe I am, but I was a young, lonely guy. It didn't seem like a bad thing to me, so I told her, yeah, come on. She comes out there, and long story short, I got jumped. I got jumped by a group of dudes twice, and the hotel called the cops both times, I'm pretty sure. And the police came, beat on my door. They said, Jacob. I said, yeah. They said, can we come in? I said, actually, I'd rather come out there. They said, okay. So I step outside, and the police tell me, we heard about what happened to you. We just need to make sure you're okay. I said, actually, I wasn't going to call the cops, but, since y'all are here already, hell no, I ain't okay. I said, this is the second time I got jumped by these dudes. I said, the first time there was 3 of them. Tonight there was five of them. Like, I said, what do I got to do? Fight 10 of these dudes next? I said, I didn't come out here to raise hell and get drunk and go to the bar and pick fights. I'm just trying to make my money, do my job, and come home and be left alone. And I can't do that. I'm being, every time I come through here, I'm getting jumped by these dudes. They said, well, unfortunately, in the state of New Jersey, it's not a crime. When men fight, it's not a crime. It's just a disorderly persons. They said, unless they used a weapon on you, or you were seriously injured, or we personally witnessed the attack, we can't do anything about it. So I said, all right. Very next day, I got a newspaper. Long story short, I moved out of that place. But as fate would have it, one night, I was told that all those guys got kicked out, and they had been kicked out, but they allowed this one guy to come back there. And I happened to be with a guy one night. He was still living there. He asked me to drop him off. So I'm thinking, all right, sure, no problem. Like, I didn't see any problem with going back there, because I had heard all those guys got kicked out. Well, they had, but one guy he was allowed to come back. He had told the bartender he would kill her and kill her kids. Like, he was part of the pipeline mafia. Like, there was testimony of this in my trial, and there was paper records of it because the bartender filed a report. And if she hadn't written that down on paper and made a formal complaint, they would have swept that under the rug, and that would have never came out. But luckily for me, it did come out. But so after telling the bartender he would kill her and kill her kids and bury them in the pipeline, they let him come back that night. He was in there smacking this kid, and trying to get him to go out and fight him. And the guy sitting next to the dude at the bar, he turns around and puts his arm out like that. And the dude, this is all on camera, he pulls his fist back like he's going to punch him in the face. And this was like 15 minutes before I showed up. So long story short, I showed up. I remember the girl, Emily, she whispered in my ear. She was like, "That guy's behind you." And I turned around. There he was. The dude was on some bullshit. He was already in there trying to pick a fight, wanting to fight somebody. And long story short, he asked me to fight, and I took him up on his offer, and I walked out the bar, had a fist fight. Thought I just knocked him out, and went home, threw my clothes on the floor, and went to sleep. Well, I wake up the next morning with gold badges all in the windows and doors, police surrounding the house, and they're like, "You need to come with us." They said, "This guy named Dave says he had a fight with you. Could that be true?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, it's true." I said, "But I know he ain't telling you the whole story, and I don't even understand why y'all are here. You told me it's not a crime to fight. You didn't care when they was jumping me. Like, why do you care?" And they said, "Well, he's hurt a little worse than you think he is." So I'm like, "Well, am I going to have a bail, man? Because I got to be to work tomorrow. Like, I'm getting a promotion." And they said, "Yeah, you're going to have a bail." So they pushed me in the courtroom, and I stand in front of the judge, and the judge is like, "Your charge was purposefully, knowingly, purposely, willfully inflicting serious bodily injury that resulted in the death of David Earl Hallmark." I knew I'd been in a fight with a guy named Dave, but that's all I knew. And they said, basically told me I was charged with first-degree murder. And I turn around and I'm like looking for somebody else. I'm like, "Who is?" "Not me. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, bro. Like, I'm just here for fighting." And they pushed me out of the courtroom, and I look at one of the detectives as I walk out, and I said, "Hey, that guy didn't die." And he just looked at me and nodded his head like that. Like, "Yeah, he did." And that's how it happened.
Let me ask you this, right? So you get in a fist fight with this cat, he falls down, hits his head. Is that how he dies?
No. I mean, it was a pretty intense fight. The dude was way bigger than me. I was only like 155 pounds at this time, and I weigh like 235 now, and that's how much. That's how this guy. He was like the same height as me. He was about 6'2", 235. I was about 6'2", 155. So I wasn't trying. I went with all I had. I'm not trying to let this dude hurt me. So I elbowed him in the face. I punched him. I elbowed him, and I admitted to all that. I kneed him in the face. Used my knees, elbows, everything, and then as I left, like I kicked him in his face, like as hard as I could, pretty much. Just he was trying to get back up, and I wasn't trying to let him get up and get his hands on me. So I gave him one swift kick to the head, and I don't know if that's what it was that killed him, but the autopsy said that he died from blunt force trauma to the head, neck, and face, and subarachnoid hematoma was the cause of death. So like his brain shook in his skull and swelled up, and he died right there on the sidewalk.
How old were you at the time, Jacob?
Like 27.
27 years old. You're in a courtroom in New Jersey. You're not from Jersey. You're not from up around that way. And they're telling you that you're charged pretty much with first-degree murder. What's the feeling like inside? What's going through Jacob's mind in that moment? Are you thinking like, wow, I might get a life sentence?
It didn't seem real. It seemed like I was in a dream. I was like, okay, this is enough now. I need to go ahead and wake up. It took a little bit for it to actually set in, because it just, like I said, when they first told me, my brain just refused to accept it. Like I heard exactly the words that were said to me, but I'm turning around looking for somebody else. Like, who are they talking to? Because I know they're not talking to me. So yeah, it was real. It was surreal, for sure.
Definitely a hurtful experience, huh?
Oh yeah. It definitely was. It changed my life forever.
Say this, right? There's a lot of dudes out here watching this, right? There's people in prison, people watching from contraband cell phones, and you never think really in your mind like, hey man, you get in a fist fight, someone's gonna die, and I'm gonna be facing 35 years in prison. That probably never goes through people's mind. I think we just get it on, and that's what it is. But sometimes things go bad, and when they go bad like that, they go all the way bad, right?
Exactly. And that's really, I guess that's why I want to tell this story, because I want people to understand, if it could happen to me, it could happen to you, because I'm really not a violent person. I don't go around starting shit. I've been in trouble, but the only trouble really in my life has been controlled dangerous substances. I've been in trouble for drugs, but I've never been a violent person. Never been a thief or but I feel like there's people out there just like me, and if they heard this story, they might think twice before engaging in or just fighting over frivolous things. Like, if it's not worth killing somebody over, it ain't worth going there to me. I'm a super and really I always have been a non-confrontational person. I wasn't looking for no problems there, but they found me, and that's how it happened. Hopefully, some people will hear the story and think twice before getting themselves in what I went through.
So you're down there, you're in Jersey, you're fighting the case a little bit. Is there a plea offer? Do they offer you a plea at all?
So that was real weird, man. Like, they acted like they would, but then they would take it back. They'd be like, well, would you take 10? And I would tell my lawyer, and even my grandmother, before she died, she made me promise her. She begged me not to take any deals. But it's scary facing that life sentence. And they came at me at one point. They came at me and said, okay, 7 years. And so my brother was there, my girlfriend was there, so we were all three charged with murder. They were charged with like accessory to murder. Like, they basically kept them guys hostage the whole time. When they smoked me and I lost trial, they let those guys go. But at that time, my brother was there and my girlfriend was there, and I told them, I said, look, I'll take the 7 years if you let them go. And they said, well, we're letting them go anyway. And I said, all right then, well, let's go to trial. And but yeah.
Now you end up going to trial. What's it like during trial? Do you think I'm gonna beat this case? I'm gonna get out? This was a self-defense case?
So the years I was in the county jail for like 3.5 years leading up to it, and yeah, I honestly thought there's no way in hell when 12 people hear this whole story and hear what really happened, despite the fact that the prosecutor was like twisting the shit, and like, their opening statement was Jacob Gentry beat this man to death and then said he deserved it, said he deserved what he got. But yeah, that's actually true, but I had no clue that the dude was dead, and you can clearly tell that by, I gave a 76-page statement. I told the whole story, and you can clearly tell that I had no idea what was really going on. But they wanted that jury to believe that I beat that man to death on purpose, and I said he deserved to die. Like, just little things like that. They would twist things around, and they actually matter of fact, the bartender that took the stand and testified that yes, he told me he was going to murder my children, she got up there and like fake cried. Her, the other bartender, and one of this guy's friends, there was a lady who actually beat the shit out of my girlfriend, Emily. All three of those women got up there and gave them this fake, phony, theatrical testimony on the witness stand, and they were like wiping away fake tears and pretending to cry. It was crazy, man. But just even though they were doing things like that, I was like, there's no way that 12 people are all going to sentence me and send me to prison. There's going to be at least one person that's going to say, hell no, I'm not sending, like, I'm not going to do it. Y'all can keep me in this room for 3 months, and I'm not going to say guilty. I really believe that. There's no way 12 people are all going to say I'm guilty of this. But in my first trial, they acquitted me of first-degree murder, but they found me guilty of aggravated manslaughter. And then the judge gave me the maximum sentence he could give me, which was 30 years, no early release. Plus, they gave me 5 years running consecutive for failure to render aid to an injured victim.
So now I want to take you back to the trial process, right? They convict you. They come back and they say guilty. In your mind, you're thinking at least one person's going to help me, right? When you do hear that jury verdict of guilty, what goes through your mind? What are the emotions like? I want people to hear this. I've been through it. Tell them what it was like for you.
I remember looking back at my mother and hearing my mom and dad like gasp, and it kind of like makes me almost want to tear up right now just reliving that moment. But I remember telling my mom, I'm going to be okay. Like, don't worry about me, Mama. Like, I just wanted to comfort her, you know, because it really hurt my parents so bad. And I guess when you're in that situation, it is for my verdict and as well as my sentencing, you have to, or at least me personally, this was just something I guess I did out of self-preservation, because I had to hope for the best but expect the worst. So I really wasn't surprised when they came back with that guilt. You know, it really didn't surprise me that much, because in my mind mentally I had prepared myself to hear that, you know. In the same way with my sentencing, when they sentenced me to the maximum, like I pretty much knew it was coming already. And if I hadn't done that, you know, if I had been like, oh no, I'm going home, and then just to have my hopes and dreams like crushed, you know, I might have went back and hung it up. So like I had to mentally prepare myself for the worst, and that's what I did.
You know, what was your lawyer telling you? Was he thinking you were going to beat it too?
He was pretty encouraging about it, but you know, he actually begged me to take that 7. You know, I think he was a little bit afraid to go head to head with the state. But you know, I feel like he did his best, and but yeah, he knew I had a good case. And when I said I want to go to trial, like you could tell, like you could see like the little gears working in his mind. Like, yeah, I would love to take this to trial and beat it, but at the same time, he didn't want to see me get smoked, because we kind of grew to have a pretty good relationship, him and I. At one point, the prosecutor, you know, they were trying to smoke my ass so hard, and he told me, I wasn't there when it was said, but he told me the conversation after secondhand. But he said that one of the prosecutors, was talking about me, and he said, you know what? Out of every scumbag I've ever represented in my whole career in law, you know, in being an attorney, he said there's one person that I've represented that I would bring to my house and allow around my wife and my children. And he said, you know who it is? He said, it's Gentry. And I, you know, and that's true, because I did go to his house, like while I was out on bail, you know, before the second trial, like I did, like I spent some time, I did hang out with him at his home and met his family and everything. So he did want the best for me, you know. And really, I'm go ahead.
Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I don't even remember what I was going to. Oh, I just said I'm glad that I went to trial now. You know, had I taken that deal, like I ended up actually suing them for wrongful conviction. I got a little bit of money out of it, and I'm proud that I beat them. You know what I mean? I would always hated the fact that I gave in and said, okay, I plead guilty. You know, that would have bothered me for the rest of my life, and I'm proud that I won.
Let me ask you this, though. You're proud now. You're happy that you won. But after you get sentenced to 35 years, right? You ever laying in your cell like, wow, man, I should have taken that 7?
Hell yes. Yep. For the whole time I was in there, I wish that I would have taken a deal. Yeah.
With a 35-year sentence, right? You're sitting in your cell, or you're just thinking like, damn, man, my life's over, man. I'll never get married. I'll never have kids. I'll get out when I'm an old man. What's going through your mind at that time?
Well, my attorney, and then I was also real cool with the public defender of that county, Sussex County, New Jersey. Both of those came to me, you know, after the guilty verdict or after my sentencing. They said, "You're coming back. You're coming back." They said, "Don't go down there and act crazy. Don't go down there and start getting in trouble." They said, "You're going to come back." They messed up, you know, and I actually did that. I tried my best, you know. I stayed out of the way because I believed them, and I did. You know, it did happen. I did come back. I got a new trial, but they pretty much told me, like, you'll be back. And I can remember. I'll tell this little story real quick because I think it's really profound. So when I first got down there, like I would toss and turn, and roll around and I couldn't sleep, and just all night long I would be thinking, and like, I guess you could call it praying, talking to God, and I would say, why am I having to go through this? Why me? I wouldn't kill nobody like that on purpose. I don't deserve this. So why am I having to do this? And and I would think, like, if I had just gone back the way that I came that night to that place, or if I had just not gone in, or if I had just stayed home and not gone out that night, and there's just all these little things. If one of those things would have been different, none of that stuff would have ever happened. So one day, we didn't have cable there at that time, and they had like this staticky channel. I think it was like Ion channel or UPN or something, and they would play movies on Saturdays and Sundays, and the TV was like super staticky, but like that was the best you could get at that time. So I'm sitting there watching this staticky TV screen, and I watched this movie called The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. And the movie is about Brad Pitt. He's born a little old man, and he ages backwards and then dies as a baby. And there's a part in that movie, like he makes friends with this little girl in Louisiana, and they become like good friends. And this girl, she wants to become a ballerina, and she moves to New York City to go to like ballet school. Well, while she's there, she gets hit by this car and crippled, and she can never be a ballerina. And he like lays it out, all these things that all happened. Like somebody was fighting with their girlfriend and stayed up too late and overslept, and the alarm went off and didn't wake them up. This person's shoe came untied. This thing fell out the window. Like all these things just all happened at the same time. And if one of those things hadn't happened, that girl would have not got hit by that car. And he just is kind of like explaining, like, sometimes in life, things are just meant to happen. It's the universe. And for whatever reason, watching that part of that movie, it just all clicked. Like, and I just understood, like, this is just meant to be, and that really gave me like a lot of comfort, and I tried to make the best out of it. I tried to be as positive as I could. I tried to read. I tried to learn. I wanted to become better and just make the best out of a bad situation.
Before we started the interview, we had a brief conversation, and you spoke about, you were praying to God, like, if you let me out of here, if you let me win my appeal, this is what I'm gonna do to you. This is what I'm gonna do. You made promises, right? What was that like?
What was it about?
What was it about?
So as far as the, I'll never sell drugs again, I don't know that I actually made that promise to God, but I guess I kind of made that promise to myself and my mother, and, but yeah, while I was in there, I made a bucket list of all these things that I had never done and I always wanted to do. And, there's a lot of things that I want to do. Like I did think a lot about if I ever get my life back. And one of the things was, like I had said before, I had a little bit of a criminal history involving drugs. And I did make a promise. I mean, maybe you could say I promised it to God. If I promise it to myself, to me, that's pretty much the same as promising it to God, I guess. I'm not saying that I'm God, but I think we all have sparks of the divine in us. But yeah, I told myself I was never going to sell drugs. I was never going to put my freedom in jeopardy ever again. And I ended up breaking that promise, like I told you.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to that in a second, right? But I just kind of wanted to ask you about that. And I know you end up winning this appeal. How do you find out that you win your appeal when you finally do win?
So I knew, like, when I first got assigned my attorney, my cellmate, he had been in there for like 20 years, and he knew everybody down there. And when I first found out who my attorney was, he said, let's go down to the law library and holler at Ray. Now, Ray Cagno, his real name is Aurelio Cagno, and this dude is like a mafiosi. Oh, he's like 90 years old now, but he was in there for like whacking the consigliere of the Colombo family or something. And we get down there and he said, Ray, what's up? This is my boy Country. He said, tell him who your lawyer is, Country. I said, Stephen W. Kirsch. And the old man looked at me and he kind of lit up. He said, Steve Kirsch? Who's got Steve Kirsch? You got Steve Kirsch? And I said, yeah, I got Steve Kirsch. He goes, kick back. You're home already. And I was just like, I said, what? I said, it's like that? And he said, well, I'll put it to you this way. Nobody can win them all, but I bet you this guy wins 2 out of 3. And so I was super excited. I run back to the cell. I called my mom. I'm like, Mom. Like, I just met this old mafia dude and he told me my lawyer's awesome. So I tell my mom who it is, and she contacts the guy. And then he tells her, he said, look, give me a few months to read the transcripts and then familiarize myself with the case. And then I'll let you know what I think about it. So 3 or 4 months goes by. He calls my mom back and he said, ma'am, he said, I have been an appellate attorney for 40 years. And he said, if your son's case is not the biggest injustice that I've ever seen in my whole career, it's most definitely in the top 3. He said, I've got a rule where I keep my business, my work, and my home life completely separated. I don't take my work home with me at night, but I can't help it with this case. He said, I can't help but take your son's case home with me at night. I think about it like all the hours of the day. And he said, I'm going to do everything that I can to get him out of there. So that sounded really good, when my mom told me this. Then they have the oral argument like 9 months later. He calls her back. He called her as soon as he walked out of the courtroom. He said, this is something else. I never do this. I never say we won before the decision comes back. But he called her right when he walked out of the courtroom, and he told my mom, he said, we won. And so that sounded awesome. But it's still like going back to that hope for the best, expect the worst tank, like I wasn't going there in my mind. Like, you know what I mean? I wouldn't, like, it sounded good, but until I was walking out those doors, I wasn't getting my hopes up. And a few months later, after the oral argument, I called my mom one night. I said, Mom, how you doing? She said, baby, I'm wonderful. And I knew right then when she said that, I knew what it was. I knew. And I said, but I wanted her to say it. I want to hear her say it. And I said, why? And she said, and she started to cry. And she said, because you're coming home. And I always kind of got to fight back the tears when I talk about that moment too. But yeah.
I mean, to have, I know, man. I had 40 years, and to get that email, I got an email that said, hey, pretty much, man, call me. And I call, and they're like, you won, you're getting out. And 40 years, 35 years, same thing, right? And It makes me think about that. And you know what? Sometimes when you win, man, you're happy and you're like, yo, I just want to do the right thing. I want to get out of here. And then sometimes you get back in the street, and we're going to get into this part of your story in a second. But sometimes it's like you forget, man. You appreciate it at first, and then you just kind of get like maybe arrogant a little bit, and you don't really appreciate all the things and the freedom again. But anyway, you end up, you win that appeal. You walk out. What's it like when you walk out?
It was pretty surreal, and it was one of the highest highs I've ever felt in my life. Hearing that not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. There's actually a picture that they snapped a picture of me during that moment, and I was just amped up. And I walk out the courtroom, and one of the jurors actually runs up and hands me an envelope, and it had a letter that she had written me this letter like during jury deliberations, and was talking about how hard it was on her. And how she could only imagine what I was going through.
This was your second trial you're talking about, right?
Yes, sir.
You win your appeal. I want to know what it feels like when you walk out. You're walking out of jail on this first appeal, right? You do get out, right?
No, well, yeah, I did bail out. So yeah, when I won my appeal, my conviction was overturned. I got shipped back to Sussex County Jail. My bail, they couldn't hold me at no $1 million murder bail anymore. They because I was acquitted of that in my first trial. All they could hold me on was an aggravated manslaughter bail, which was at most like $300,000 cash, and that's what they set it at. So a couple weeks later, I go for a bail reduction. I'm trying to get it down to like 150 or 2. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get a bail reduction. The judge like rolls his eyes. He had like these big furry eyebrows that look like caterpillars on his face. And he like rolls his eyes, and he's like 275, and basically like I could just tell what he was thinking in his mind, like whatever, you ain't gonna bail out anyway, bro. Just stop wasting everybody's time. So he sets it at 275. I go back to jail, and my parents didn't have it at first. I sat in county jail about 6 months, and my dad he put it together, and then my mom came and bailed me out. That I'll never forget that. Like, I had just won a spades tournament. I just got like 3 laundry bags full of food, and they came on the speaker and they said, "Gentry, pack it up." And the whole pod that I was in, everybody just went wild, man. Like they like cheered, you know. And that was a wild experience. I took them laundry bags of food and just dumped them back out on the floor and like, y'all can have that back. And I walked out to like a standing ovation. Then as I walked out of the jail, the cops lined up down both sides of the sidewalk and like took their gloves off and held their hand out, and like they all shook my hand as I walked out of the jail. And my mom actually started crying when they did that. But
yeah. And you got to see your grandmother too, right?
I did get to see my grandmother. I sure did.
One of your goals, like, I want to see my grandmother again before, because I knew she was sick or whatever. I mean, was that something in your heart? Like, I really want to get out and see her and be free.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. I was super close with my grandmother. Like, even when I was wrong in my grandmother's eyes, I could do no wrong in her eyes. You know what I mean? Like, she was, both my grandmothers actually, they're both gone now, but like I was super, super close with both of my grandmothers.
Man, crazy story. So now you get out, they tell you, hey, look, we're going to retry you. What's going through your mind when now you got to go to another trial?
Yeah. I'd already been through it once. I guess it was a scary thing. I was out on bail for 6 months, and yeah, I know it was hard because I didn't eat like during that whole trial. There was a couple months that went by. Like, me and my mother were staying at a Holiday Inn, and they had like this big breakfast buffet with like all you can eat bacon and sausage and biscuits and gravy and like this bomb ass breakfast. And every morning I would just look at that. I wouldn't touch it. I survived. I lived on like whey protein milkshakes for a couple months. Like, I didn't eat at all. But I guess it was just the stress, So yeah, it's stressful as hell.
Stress could definitely kill you. So now you go back to this trial. Is there a cop out the second time at the second trial? Is there a plea offer?
No, they pretty much forced me to go back. I actually tried to cop out because I had like 7 years in, right? And I knew that second-degree manslaughter carries 10 years with no early release. So that basically means you got to do 8.5 years. And when you get 2 years from your release date, which would have been 8.5 years, and I had 7 in, you can go to a halfway house. So I'm thinking, like, if I can take the maximum for second-degree reckless manslaughter. The only difference in aggravated manslaughter and reckless manslaughter is aggravated manslaughter, you showed an extreme indifference for human life and ignored a probability of death. Reckless manslaughter is you showed an indifference for human life and ignored a possibility of death. Now, I hit this dude in this fight. The detectives asked me how many times I hit him. They were like, "Did you hit him? How many times you hit him? Like 50?" And I was like, "No, hell no, like maybe 10. Well, the autopsy, the medical examiner ruled that he was hit with approximately 11 blows. So I was as honest as I could be about it. And I don't think, even if you kick somebody in the face, that's probably going to kill them. You know what I'm saying? So I felt like worse. If I'm guilty of anything, at most, it's just reckless manslaughter. It's not aggravated. So I said, I will take the maximum for reckless manslaughter. I'll take 10 years. And I knew that I would be eligible for a halfway house. I could go get a job at McDonald's and get a girlfriend, you know what I mean? And be eating street food and kicking it with girls. And that would have made me real happy. But they said, "Oh, no, hell no. We're going to give you 85 years this time." And they forced me to go back to trial, which I'm happy they did.
Nasty, nasty people, aren't they? No compassion.
Oh, man. I could sit here and talk forever about it. Particularly, I had like 2 prosecutors. There was a male and a female. The guy, he would act like he wasn't so bad of a guy. He wasn't as like nasty and vicious and just vindictive. And like this lady, dude. So I'm sitting out on the little church pews, whatever you want to call them, outside the courtroom, waiting for court to start up again. And this woman and her little gang of detectives all around, and she's got like 5 dudes, all detectives. And she approaches me. She walks past me and turns and looks at me and just starts freaking out and screaming, talking about, "Get him away from me! Get him away from me!" And I'm just looking at her like, "Are you serious right now? Like, I've been sitting here for 30 minutes and you come walking up on me and screaming about get me away from you? Like, you're mentally, you got problems, lady." And the jury saw that. You know, there were several times throughout my trial that the whole jury like busted out in laughter, like they over like things that I would say or like my reactions to her. But like I just killed her with kindness, you know, like I took my seat and just turned. I just faced the jury. I looked at, and I wouldn't even look at her. I cocked my seat and I looked at every juror right in their face. And this lady, she started like, I swear to God, she almost like jerked her own hair out. She's jumping. She's throwing like this temper tantrum and showing like how insane she is. You know what I mean? Like jumping up and down and just talking about, look at me, look at me. And I just said, ma'am, I would prefer to address the jury. They're the ones that hold my life in their hands. You know what I mean? It's not, you're the one trying to take it away. So I'd prefer not to look at you. And then my lawyer says, Your Honor, my client doesn't have to look at her. There's nothing that says you have to look at the prosecutor. So I think that actually worked very well for me because she showed how unhinged she was, you know. And like there was, like I said, there were several times throughout that trial that the jury like laughed at her. Or more, it wasn't laughing at her; it was laughing at my responses to her.
So, you know, you end up beating it. You talked about one of the jurors running up to you with a letter. Tell me more about that because I cut you off, and I'm sure people want to know.
Yeah, that's pretty wild, man. So she runs up, but she doesn't say anything. She just handed me that envelope, and I got in the car with my mom, and I opened it up, and it said, I'm writing this. It's in the middle of the night. I can't sleep. You know, this is during deliberations. And she's like, if everything goes the way I want it to, you're going to be walking out of there a free man tomorrow. And she said, this is so stressful for me. And I can only imagine what you're going through. And she said, look, none of us are perfect. And I know you've made mistakes in your life, but we all can see that you're a good person. And you know, that's something else that just makes me want to tear up just thinking about that and her. And I'm actually still friends with this lady. And she told me, you know, I started my own YouTube channel about a month or 6 weeks ago. And she told me that she'd be on it. Like she'd do whatever I want her to do. And I think that would be really cool to sit down and have an interview with her.
100%. What's the name of your YouTube channel? Tell the people.
It's Jacob's Ladder 111.
Jacob's Ladder 111. We'll post that in the link so people can go check you out. So Jacob, you beat this stuff. You're home free, but you end up getting involved back into some drug situations, right? And you end up running into some Southsiders, some Serranos. Tell us what happens or how you get back involved in this whole drug thing.
Yeah, this is something I'm really ashamed of. You know, I hate to admit it. I know it's stupid. I know how dumb this is, but you know, the truth hurts, I guess, sometimes. So yeah, I was living with my grandfather. My grandma had died, and he had a lady in there living with him, and she was trying to like drive a wedge between us. You know, she kept telling him things and trying to make him get mad at me. And like I went to him and I said, you know, why is she always doing that? Why is she always trying to make you mad at me? He said, well, it doesn't work, does it? And I said, well, I don't know. Like, no, it doesn't seem like you're mad at me, but you know, if it was somebody trying to make me mad and manipulate my feelings towards my grandson, I would put my foot down and I would say, look, you need to dead that shit. Like that ain't cool. Stop it. But he never would tell her, don't do that anymore. And that kind of made me feel like I was in the way, like maybe they didn't want me there. So I really wanted to get my own place to live. And right about that time, I happened to get a call from someone in my past. They said that a person that we both used to work for wanted to talk to me. So this is somebody that I always really like. I knew him, but from a distance. I was never like in there with him. I was never cool with him. And I always told myself, man, if I was in there with that dude, if that dude knew what a loyal guy I was and how honest I was and how I would never mess up his money, like, you know, I'd be set. And I always wished that I was cool with that guy. And then at that point in my life, dude called me and said that guy wanted to talk to me. So I called him up. He made me a proposal. And I thought about it, and I knew that I said I would never, ever get involved in anything like this ever again. But I guess it was the devil. I don't know what you want to call it, but that little voice inside my mind said, you know what? You just spent your whole young adulthood. You'd have a house. You'd have a place to live if they hadn't taken that away from you, and you didn't deserve what happened to you. like the world owes you something. You know, if you got to cut a few corners just briefly to get on your feet, you know, then so be it. And that's what I told myself. I said, look, I'm not going to start doing this forever. I'm just going to do it for a little bit. I'm going to get ahead, and then I'm going to stop. And that's pretty much what I did. Well, I stopped when some people tried to murder me, actually. I don't know if you can say it. Can you say that on YouTube? I know everybody's always saying unalive and all that.
Tell us what happens. You go to this house. What happens?
So yeah, I was I got in there with this other guy. This even had nothing to do with the guy from Michigan. I kind of like, once I got in, I sort of branched out on my own, and I was still messing with him, but I was messing with these other guys too. And the boss, he was behind the wall, you know what I mean? And but he had a phone, and he would instruct me where to go, when to go there, and tell me what I needed to do. And I'd always do that. Well, this particular time, I head out there. I'm on my way. I'd already been driving a couple hours, and because normally everything was cool, you know. I'd done this several times, and anyway, I called them. I said, "Hey, I'm on the way." And they said, "Actually, we got something going on. We can't see you tonight." And I said, "Well, that sucks." So I'm already halfway there, and they said, "Well, if you want to come down and get a room and just chill, we can see you tomorrow." So I said, "All right, that's what I'm gonna do then." So I come down there, I get a room. I'm talking with the boss, you know, till like midnight. At midnight, my phone ran out of minutes. So I pull out my wallet, I put in my debit card, put another $50 on the phone. It still ain't working. Now it gets to be like 3 o'clock in the morning. So I go to Walmart, I buy a card off the shelf, I put that number in the phone. It still ain't working. So now it gets to be about 8 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, what do I do? You know, I mean, I can't just stay here forever. Like I got to do something. So I make the decision. I'm like, well, I'm just going to go knock on the door and tell them, like, hey, my phone ain't working. I ain't know what else to do. So that's what I did. I go knock on the door. They open it up, let me inside, and they said, what do you need? And I was like, look, I'm sorry for just showing up like this, but my phone ain't working. I didn't know what else to do. And they pulled a shotgun out. Dude stuck the barrel of the shotgun right in my face, and he said, lay your ass down. So I'm like, all right, bro. I'm like, bro. I said, you need to call Speedy. You need to call Speedy. You need to call Speedy. And dude just started lifting the gun up. It had like a metal plate on the butt of it. He was lifting that gun up to the ceiling and just bam, smashing my head with it. And every time I was like, call Speedy, bro. Like, stop. Like, call Speedy. And he hit me like 3 times with that gun. Another one ran up, smashed a liquor bottle over my head, and that liquor bottle just shattered into a million little tiny pieces. And I can see like the shattered bottle, the glass all in the carpet. I can see my blood all in the carpet, and I can smell my blood in the air. And another one runs up and stabs me in the head with a pair of scissors. And I look over, and I see half of the scissors laying by my face. And that's when I realized, that's when it clicked. You know, until that point, I was just like, I just thought they were trying to beat me up, you know. But when I saw that half the scissors laying by my face, that's when that little light went off, and I was like, yo, they're not just trying to beat you up, bro. Like, they just tried to stab your brains out with those scissors. Like, they just stabbed you in the head with a pair of scissors. Like, they're trying to kill you. And I have, like, this vision in my mind of me being knocked out and them dragging me in the bathtub and sawing me up. So I just asked myself, like, are you gonna let them do that? Are you going to let them knock you out and saw you up in the bathtub? And I said, no, hell no, not without a fight. And that's when I jumped up off the floor and I started fighting. And I somehow miraculously fought my way out of that house and ran down the driveway and got in the car. Jump in the car. My girl just looks at me and sees my head ripped open and starts screaming. And I'm like, go, 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 go. And that was the last time I was ever involved with drugs.
That was it. Changed your life. Never talked to Speedy again, or no?
Well, I texted him as I left, and he actually was like, you can go back over there. And I'm just like, nah, bro, I'm good. But I texted him, I was like, look, man, your people, I don't think he realized the severity of the situation, really. But as I left, I texted him, I said, hey, bro, your people just tried to kill me. And he was like, what the fuck? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, hold on, I'm about to check them. So he calls them or whatever, and then he texts me back, and he said, you're lucky. He said, they told me they tried to shoot you in the back as you ran out, but you shouldn't have got away. They tried to kill you. He said, yeah, they tried to get you. And he told me that they told him that I was trying to like cut him out of the deal or go around him somehow, which don't make no sense at all. It was just they were just jealous of me for some reason. I don't know if it was because I was too cool with him and I wasn't the same race as them and I just had too much power and they were jealous of that. I have no idea why they did that. But it was enough it changed my life forever. I'll never be involved in nothing like that ever again.
Well, that's what's up. So what are you doing now, man?
I drive a dump truck for pretty much, you could say I work for the federal government. I work at a power plant owned by the federal government, and I drive a dump truck. They burn coal to generate electricity, right? And then the coal leaves behind hella ashes. So they have to have a place to dispose of these ashes. So we build these big, giant, pretty much lakes, and to dispose of these ashes. It's a landfill for ashes, basically. I drive around in circles, picking up dirt, dumping dirt off, just driving in circles all day, and I love it.
That's what's
I
up.
listen to you. I can listen to your podcast, and I do listen to you at work sometimes.
Well, I appreciate you. Look, man, you're free. You're living your best life. Whatever happened with Emily? Maybe some people might want to know. Did she stay in contact?
So actually, yeah, Emily, I talked to her about 2 years ago, and I said something she didn't like, and she got mad about it, and I haven't talked to her since. But yeah, I did. I talked to her a couple years ago. She ended up having like 4 kids. She adopted some kids that aren't even hers. She had kids with this dude, and he had other kids, and somehow she ended up with his kids. Like, it's kind of weird, but I'll always love that girl. You know, they went to her multiple times saying, look, just give us a statement. Tell us what we want to hear, and you can walk out of this jail today. She sat in jail for 4 years and would not tell. You know, most people would have lied their asses off just to get out. You know, most people. I can guarantee you there's not a lot of people that would have sat in there like she did for me, and I'll love that girl till the day I die. It's almost a shame. I kind of, you know, sometimes I think about reaching out to her and telling her I'm sorry for whatever. You know, it wasn't even nothing serious that I said. I just kind of said some slick shit. But it wasn't that serious.
That's life.
Say
Sometimes,
what?
that's life.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes things happen, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, listen, man, I'm going to ask you a question, right? I don't know if you want to say, but, you know, people always think, man, when the police do this or they do that, they always win lawsuits. And you said, you ended up getting a little bit of money. And what was the range? So people kind of know. A lot of times you get screwed, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So that whole thing about making that decision to do what I did, I did that. Like, had I known that I was getting that settlement, I never, ever, like, this is something crazy too. I went to the hospital and got my head stitched back together, and I get home. This is the very same day that happened. The lawyer up in New Jersey, my phone rang, and he said they were offering me a settlement, and my jaw just dropped. And I'm just like, you mean I almost died today? Like, people are trying to kill me. People are trying to put me in prison. Like, I'm risking my life and my freedom for nothing. I could have just sat back and like bought a house with the settlement. That's all I wanted was a house. And I could have done it with the settlement. But the lawyer, he was telling me, look, there's no guarantee that you're going to get anything from this. So I really, like I said before, I hope for the best, expect the worst. I wasn't counting on that to happen. But I wish that I would have, because I never would have got involved in that stuff. But like, I really believe everything happens for a reason. But so what was your question? Were you asking me like how much I got?
Yeah. What they give you?
I said, so they first came with 150 grand, and I said, let me think about it. And I said, look, I don't think that's enough. You know, I was making good money. They took 7 years of my life away. You know, I was probably making 100 grand a year. So I don't think that's enough. So he comes back and he says 2.25. And I asked my grandpa, I said, Pa, you know, they're offering me almost $250,000. He said, well, son, sometimes a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. And, you know, like I said, all I wanted was a house. And even after paying them their cut, like out of that, I took the 225, but after paying the lawyers and everything, they all got their hands on it. I ended up with about $135,000. And I took that money and I bought a house, I bought my dog, and I bought a motorcycle.
It's all good. Listen, man, I appreciate you coming on, man. I want you to live your best life. I'm glad that you made it out. I mean, you got a hell of a story. Look, this is probably one of my top 5 interviews, bro. I'm glad that I was able to connect with you, because the interview's real, man. This is it. It's real. You went through some shit, a lot of stuff, and everything from a plea agreement to the emotions of going to a trial and losing and having a juror respond. So, man, I appreciate you, and I want you to live your best life. Anything you want to say before we get ready to go, Jacob?
Well, first off, I want to say I appreciate you for letting me on here, man. I appreciate you letting me spread the message, and I just what I would like to say is I want I want to make the world a better place. I know I've done a lot of bad stuff. Like I contributed, I did the evil in my life, and like no matter what you've done, like you can always make a choice to be better and to make yourself better and to make the world better. And in these times we're living in, it doesn't seem like a lot of people really care about the state of the world. And I like for everybody to just like take an introspective look at themselves and and the world, and just decide to make it better. Improve, be better people, be nice to each other.
What's up? Listen, man, again, man, thank you for coming on. I'm going to tell people, if you like what we're doing, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Check out Jacob's channel. It's in the description. Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Until tomorrow, with respect, we're out.